They called James Harrington a visionary, a trailblazer, a man whose name sparked envy in boardrooms across the globe. But behind the glitzy fundraisers, private jets, and sprawling penthouse suites lay a secret so explosive it threatened to bring his entire world tumbling down. Today was supposed to be his grand triumph, a wedding to the woman who had captivated him in ways no one else could. The society pages were already ablaze with excitement, yet as the organ music swelled and guests rose to their feet, an unexpected figure burst through the doors, turning this fairy tale ceremony into a powder keg of scandal and betrayal. James Harrington was the man who seemed to have it all. He was the youngest son of the late real estate mogul Frederick Harrington, whose name was synonymous with luxury apartment complexes across Europe. When Frederick passed, leaving Harrington Holdings in the hands of his two sons, James and his older brother Charles, nobody suspected the struggle for power that would ensue. From the outside, James was the charismatic face of the family, a modern-day prince with a taste for custom suits and fast cars. Charles, quieter and more conservative, preferred to let James soak up the spotlight while he worked methodically behind the scenes. James took to his role of corporate leader like a fish to water. He banked on inherited capital, expanded into new markets, and increased profits with almost ruthless efficiency. His personal life was an endless parade of gala dinners, business trips aboard private jets, and exclusive parties in his multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking the Hudson River in New York. People were intrigued by the Harrington name, equally drawn by James's good looks and the frisson of scandal that always seemed to trail him. But hidden behind the glossy magazine covers and decadent fundraisers, trouble brewed. James's marriage to Emily Harrington was once the talk of the town. She was the poised and elegant daughter of a British diplomat, an Oxford graduate with a passion for humanitarian causes. Their wedding was a grand affair at a chateau in the French countryside. The world cheered on the perfect couple James, the charming billionaire with a golden future, and Emily, the refined philanthropic woman who balanced his bold ambition with wisdom and grace. As the years passed, though James's thirst for excitement grew, he threw himself deeper into his work, forging new partnerships with venture capitalists like Bernard Livingston and technology scions such as Christine Patterson. He traveled more than ever, always chasing the next big deal or the next intangible thrill. Sometimes Emily joined him on these adventures, but more often she remained at home, focusing on her charity work and philanthropic endeavors. It was on one of these business expeditions to Singapore that James first laid eyes on Anna Beaumont, a vivacious social media influencer who turned heads wherever she went. She was everything. Emily was not impulsive, flirtatious, and eager to follow James into the nighttime haunts of high society. The closer they grew, the more James felt alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. A spark had ignited a fire, and soon that fire would threaten to burn everything he had built to the ground. Anna Beaumont hailed from an entirely different world. Born in a working-class neighborhood in Brisbane, Australia, she clawed her way into the influencer realm with a combination of relentless hustle and undeniable charm. By her early 20s, she had landed lucrative sponsorships in the fashion and beauty industry. As her star rose, so did her ambition. Instagram feeds showcased her glamorous life, celebrity parties, weekend yacht trips, and red carpet galas. She partnered with business moguls and entertainment icons, always searching for her next big break. When she met James Harrington in Singapore, sparks flew in an instant. Their introduction came at a lavish marketing conference hosted by Mary O'Neill, a well-connected socialite known for making strategic introductions. Anna, bored with the usual circle of aspiring starlets, found herself drawn to James's aura of success and confidence. He was the embodiment of the life she wanted: luxury, power, admiration. By the end of that first encounter, he had invited her to a private dinner at an exclusive rooftop restaurant. What began as harmless flirtation evolved into something far more intense. Anna and James dined under moonlit skies, whispering secrets over candlelight and expensive champagne. They discovered a shared hunger for excitement, a willingness to break rules if it meant tasting life's forbidden fruits. For Anna, James was the ultimate catch, wealthy, influential, and hungry for new sensations. For James, Anna was the escape from a staid marriage he no longer found thrilling. She was the excitement he craved, the living embodiment of a new adventure. Their bond deepened with each clandestine rendezvous. Even as James jetted off to Tokyo, Hong Kong, or London for business, Anna was often close behind, slipping into his private suite late at night. Gossip columns began to swirl with rumors of James's mysterious companion, but no one had definitive proof. Officially, James remained the dedicated husband, while unofficially, Anna was the mistress he couldn't let go. It wasn't just about the physical connection they genuinely ignited in each other, a potent sense of possibility. Anna believed James might eventually leave his marriage, though he offered only vague promises. Meanwhile, James clung to the fantasy that he could keep both women in his life: the respectable wife who upheld his family's dignified image, and the electrifying lover who made him feel truly alive. Soon, however, secrets have a way of spilling over, especially when too many prying eyes, private investigators, staff at high-end hotels, and corporate rivals are all too eager to feed rumors. It was only a matter of time before the cracks in James's marriage became fissures no amount of money could repair. Emily Harrington was never naive. She sensed the shift in her husband's behavior long before the media started buzzing. Gone were the nights of quiet companionship or shared visions for the future. Instead, James would arrive home at odd hours, sporting an unfamiliar cologne or a disheveled appearance that suggested he hadn't just been out with colleagues. He dismissed her gentle inquiries with vague answers claiming urgent business obligations or last-minute negotiations abroad. Concerned but not wanting to confront him publicly, Emily confided in her longtime friend and personal confidant, Dr. Harriet James, a psychotherapist who had treated Emily for anxiety in the past. Harriet listened intently as Emily described James's sudden emotional distance, the fleeting glimpses of guilt or regret in his eyes, and the leftover perfume scents lingering on his collar. Harriet urged her to seek professional help, not only for her own emotional well-being, but also to salvage whatever was left of their marriage. At first, Emily considered a direct confrontation. Late one night, she waited up for James to return home from a supposed business dinner. When he finally stumbled in around 3 in the morning, she demanded an explanation. But James, his eyes glazed from too much bourbon, muttered incoherent excuses. Instead of providing clarity, he shouted accusations that she was smothering him, that her constant involvement in humanitarian causes left no time for him, that she'd changed since the day they'd said, "I do." Emily left the argument in tears, retreating to the sanctuary of her bedroom. The next day, James apologized with lavish gifts, a diamond necklace, a bouquet of lilies, and a promise that things would get better. But Emily could sense the hollowness behind his words. Even then, she wanted to believe they could patch things up. She didn't want the shame of a public divorce or the heartbreak of losing the man she once adored. Yet as the months dragged on, It became impossible to ignore the quiet phone calls at odd hours. The extra plane tickets to exotic locations never meant for her, and the suspicious credit card statements for restaurants and gifts she never received. Love, it seemed, was no match against James's unbridled desire for something else, something beyond the confines of their marriage. Emily knew a showdown was brewing. What she didn't know was just how catastrophic it would become. The first hint that Emily might be pregnant came during a charity gala she organized in London, attended by top philanthropists and celebrities. Halfway through the evening, she felt a sudden wave of nausea. Assuming it was exhaustion or stress, she brushed it off, determined to see the event through to its end. But over the following week, the symptoms continued. Fatigue, lightheadedness, and unusual cravings for sweet pastries she normally loathed. A test at Dr. Harriet James's clinic confirmed Emily's suspicions she was pregnant. In another world, this would have been joyous news, an heir to the Harrington legacy, a new beginning. But the timing felt tragic. Her marriage stood on the brink, and she now carried the life of a child she feared would grow up in a home overshadowed by her husband's betrayal. One evening, Emily mustered the courage to tell James. He had just returned from a suspiciously extended trip to Los Angeles, rumored to involve a deal with the film industry mogul Brian Lockhart. Emily awaited him in the living room, nervously smoothing out her blouse. James arrived, coat slung over his shoulder, eyes tired yet brimming with restless energy. She broke the news as gently as she could. She was 3 months pregnant. For a moment, James's face softened, an expression she hadn't seen in months. He pulled her close, murmuring words she longed to hear. "I'm so happy. This is wonderful. I'll do better." For a flicker of time, Emily dared to hope. Perhaps this baby could inspire James to let go of his mistress and rediscover what truly mattered. Maybe fatherhood would awaken his dormant sense of responsibility. But the very next day, James texted Anna Beaumont while Emily was out for a prenatal appointment. His heart was torn in 2 directions. He couldn't give up the thrilling high he experienced with Anna, but he also felt a tug toward the future, a family and heir continuity. Torn by indecision, he tried to maintain both illusions. He pledged love to Anna in secret, while whispering promises of paternal devotion to Emily. Little did he realize that fate would soon force him to choose, and the spectacle would play out before the entire world. In a world dominated by social media rumors and corporate espionage, secrets rarely remain buried for long. Emily's pregnancy was publicly announced 2 months later through a discreet statement from Harrington Holdings' PR department. As congratulatory messages poured in from business associates and acquaintances, a very different kind of chatter began circulating in hushed corners of society gatherings. Whispers suggested that James Harrington might be living a double life, that the Harrington heir's father was already preparing to leave his marriage for a dazzling young mistress. Charles Harrington, James's older brother, was among the first to learn the truth. Charles's life was the antithesis of James's flamboyance. He cherished stability and loyalty, both in business and love. He had married his college sweetheart, Veronica, and while they lived a relatively modest life in London, Charles was quietly securing the family company's long-term stability. He saw James's reckless behavior as a liability for Harrington Holdings. The rumors about his brother's affair troubled him not only morally, but also because the company's public image was at stake. Charles commissioned a private investigator named Jonathan Reed to gather facts. Armed with formidable surveillance technology and a network of insider informants, Jonathan traced James's steps, collecting hotel receipts, flight manifests, and security footage from exclusive penthouse clubs. The evidence was damning. Not only was James traveling with Anna, but he had also gifted her exorbitant jewelry, charged to the company's expense accounts. Charles felt sick reading the reports his brother was risking corporate funds on a clandestine relationship that could scandalize shareholders. Meanwhile, Emily was oblivious to Charles's findings. Growing increasingly worried about James's unpredictable schedule and emotional distance, she found herself overwhelmed with doctor visits and stress-induced migraines. One morning, she discovered suspicious text messages on James's phone, referencing a secret getaway in the Maldives. Emily's hands trembled as she read Anna Beaumont's name in the conversation. The mistress was not a rumor, but a real person, sending him heart emojis and messages about longing to see him again. Shaken, Emily confronted James that evening. She had the phone logs in her hand and tears in her eyes. James tried to lie his way out, but the evidence was insurmountable. The argument escalated into a shouting match, culminating in James storming out, yelling that he refused to be trapped. Emily collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. The hollow ache in her chest felt like a prelude to a cataclysmic ending. She no longer had the strength to resist. Anna Beaumont cherished a secret fantasy, marrying a powerful billionaire in a ceremony that would eclipse any royal wedding. She envisioned a wedding dress studded with diamonds, a guest list studded with A-listers and paparazzi clamoring for photos of her every move. When James finally mentioned the possibility of marriage, albeit informally, Anna's heart soared. She believed that once James divorced Emily, their union would be unstoppable. They would become the next power couple, gracing magazine covers and building an empire that spanned continents. Her euphoria overshadowed the moral complexities of the situation. In her mind, Emily was merely a roadblock. Anna trusted James's word that his marriage had been dead for years, that Emily was the one preventing him from truly living. The only thing left was to sever the final tie, a divorce that James assured her would be amicable, if expensive. Over dinner at a swanky Parisian restaurant, James revealed his plan in hushed, excited tones. He wanted to marry Anna in a private ceremony at Château de Montclair, a centuries-old French estate known for its lavish architecture and scenic vineyards. Anna squealed with delight, her eyes sparkling as she pictured the grandeur of exchanging vows in that opulent setting. She knew the world would watch, and she relished the spotlight. But behind Anna's romantic illusions, James had ulterior motives. His marriage to Emily was indeed dying, but he feared the tabloid fallout that would ensue if details of his affair went public. He hoped a swift divorce followed by a relatively intimate wedding abroad might contain the damage. Business associates like Bernard Livingston and Christine Patterson cautioned him that such a move could shake investor confidence, but James waved off their concerns. He believed in his own invincibility. He'd always weathered storms before. In a flurry of excitement, Anna began planning the wedding. She traveled to the French countryside with her personal assistant, scanning flower arrangements, sampling gourmet hors d'oeuvres and sketching out grandiose floral arches. She enlisted the help of Mary O'Neill, the influential socialite, to coordinate the guest list. Everything moved at breakneck speed, as if they were racing to outrun the scandal that threatened to catch up. Unbeknownst to both of them, however, someone else was preparing their own grand entrance at Château de Montclair, someone armed with a DNA test, a legal summons, and the will to expose James's duplicity before the entire world. A month before the planned wedding, Emily received an anonymous package at her townhouse in Manhattan. The envelope contained documents, bank statements detailing extravagant spending on Anna Beaumont's behalf, and a small memory drive. Puzzled and trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak, Emily plugged the drive into her laptop. It revealed a trove of photographs, James and Anna kissing on a yacht in the Maldives, entering a private suite at a 5-star hotel in Tokyo, and shopping for rings at an exclusive Parisian jeweler. At the bottom of the envelope was a handwritten note. He's planning to marry her at Château de Montclair. I hope you can stop him before it's too late. No signature. Emily's tears blurred her vision. She sat at the kitchen table, reading and rereading the proof of her husband's betrayal. She knew the only person with the resources and motive to send these would be Charles or someone he'd hired. But the note's lack of identification gave her no certainty. Later that day, Emily called Dr. Harriet James to confide her discoveries. Harriet advised her to gather as much evidence as possible, not only to confront James, but to protect herself legally, especially because she was pregnant. That same evening, Emily hired Jonathan Reed, the very investigator Charles had once enlisted, to verify the contents of the mysterious package. Reed returned with confirmation the photos were genuine, and James was indeed on the verge of marrying Anna Beaumont overseas. Emboldened by this concrete evidence, Emily decided she would not sit idly by while her husband's mistress took her place. Spurred by anger and heartbreak, she reached out to the best divorce attorney in New York, Christine Patterson, famed for handling high-profile cases with surgical precision. Patterson advised Emily to file for divorce under grounds of infidelity. Emily also demanded a paternity test to ensure the Harrington heir was indeed James's child. Her heartbreak had turned to cynicism. She questioned whether James might even deny the baby was his once cornered. With legal summons in hand and a sealed envelope containing the DNA test kit, Emily boarded a flight for France. Her heart pounded as she imagined the confrontation. On one hand, fear clawed at her stomach, fear of public humiliation of seeing James stand at the altar with another woman. But on the other hand, a burning resolve fueled her. This time, she wouldn't be the passive wife left behind. She would emerge from the shadows, exposing James's deceit in a spectacular fashion that no one would soon forget. Château de Montclair was a picture of romantic fantasy. The estate's rose gardens, glittering fountains, and vine-draped terraces seemed lifted from the pages of a fairy tale. Candles lined the cobblestone paths, leading guests to an ornate marble gazebo where the ceremony was set to take place. Even on the eve of the wedding, the chateau hummed with activity. Caterers busied themselves in the kitchens. Florists perfected massive arrangements of peonies and orchids, and event staff double-checked the lighting for the next day's festivities. Anna Beaumont floated through the chateau like a queen awaiting her coronation. Dressed in a flowing white satin robe, she presided over final menu tastings and rehearsal details. Mary O'Neill orchestrated the coming and going of exclusive VIPs, who arrived from every corner of the globe. The guest list was smaller than one might expect for a billionaire's wedding, kept intentionally intimate, or so James claimed. Anna believed it was a romantic gesture, a way to ensure their vows remained personal and sacred. In truth, James hoped fewer witnesses meant fewer prying eyes and fewer tabloids picking up the scandal. Yet James wore a veneer of tension. He hadn't heard from Emily in days. No phone calls, no texts, no updates on the pregnancy. This silence unnerved him more than he cared to admit. He was also aware that rumors of Emily's potential interference were circulating. Charles Harrington had refused to attend the ceremony, citing pressing business matters as an excuse. But James knew that was a lie. His brother disapproved, and James feared he might do something drastic. Late that night, as James strolled through the chateau's dimly lit halls, he noticed a dark figure slip into the library. Concerned about potential gatecrashers, He followed quietly. Inside, he found Jonathan Reed, the private investigator, poring over documents. Their eyes locked in mutual recognition. Caught off guard, Reed pocketed the papers and tried to leave, but James blocked him, demanding to know what he was doing there. Reed offered a cryptic remark. "I'm gathering the truth, Mr. Harrington. You'll see soon enough." He slipped past James and disappeared into the corridor, leaving James to wonder if he had just glimpsed the opening act of a grand betrayal. Sleep eluded him that night, despite the plush luxury of the chateau. His mind raced with questions, and the gnawing dread that his carefully orchestrated plan was on the verge of unraveling. Morning dawned over Château de Montclair, with pastel skies and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of fresh roses. Guests filtered into the courtyard, where rows of gold-trimmed chairs were arranged around the central gazebo. A string quartet played a soft, lilting melody. Anna Beaumont, hidden away in her suite, prepared for her grand entrance. Her makeup artist delicately applied shimmering highlights, while her hairstylist wove roses and pearls into her cascading curls. Every detail was meant to scream luxury and romance. In a private suite across the chateau, James Harrington fidgeted with the cuffs of his bespoke tuxedo. He kept glancing at his phone, half expecting a call from Emily, some last-minute attempt to derail everything. But nothing came. Instead, texts from Anna fluttered onto his screen, each brimming with excitement and heart emojis. He forced a reassuring smile for the reflective surface of the antique mirror, trying to silence the voice in his head that warned he might be making an irreparable mistake. Back in the courtyard, Mary O'Neill signaled the quartet to shift into a stately processional. The guests stood, turning their gaze toward the wide stone steps where Anna would soon appear. White doves cooed in their gilded cages, ready to be released at the moment they were pronounced husband and wife. In the front row sat a few business associates, Bernard Livingston and Christine Patterson, among them watching intently. While Livingston appeared supportive, Patterson's eyes flickered with an undercurrent of tension. Rumor had it that she was also Emily's lawyer, though no one had confirmed it outright. Suddenly, the hush of anticipation was broken by the distant roar of an approaching car. Heads turned just as a sleek black sedan skidded to a halt at the chateau's main gates. Out stepped Emily Harrington, visibly pregnant, her face set in a mask of grim determination. She wore a fitted navy dress, the legal documents clutched in one hand and a sealed DNA kit in the other. Jonathan Reed emerged from the passenger side, glancing around as though assessing the best angle from which to spring their trap. Near the gazebo, James's face went pale. His worst fears had materialized, and there in front of the world's elite, he was about to face the reckoning he'd spent months trying to avoid. The string quartet faltered, their music drifting off as guests whispered in confusion. Anna, still hidden from view, had no idea that the final act of her dream wedding was about to become a living nightmare. Before Anna could appear on the staircase, Emily swept into the courtyard, commanding immediate attention. The body language of the assembled guests shifted from polite curiosity to stunned alarm. Some recognized Emily from the society pages. Others had never met her. But the drama of a visibly pregnant woman interrupting a wedding was impossible to ignore. James stood frozen at the gazebo's entrance. His mouth opened, but no words came forth. He glanced helplessly at Mary O'Neill, who seemed equally dumbstruck. Christine Patterson remained seated, her posture rigid as though bracing for the explosion about to unfold. Bernard Livingston raised an eyebrow, perhaps anticipating the fireworks to come. Clutching the legal paperwork, Emily stormed to the front, stopping just a few feet from James. Her voice trembled as she addressed the stunned audience. "Pardon the interruption," she began, "but I have some urgent business with the groom." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Emily held up her document folder, brandishing it with shaking hands. "James Harrington, you are hereby served with divorce papers on the grounds of adultery." A collective gasp rose. Reporters and photographers who had been subtly stationed at the perimeter snapped into action. The shutters of cameras clicked furiously, capturing every angle of this scandalous confrontation. Emily then held up the DNA kit. "You will also be taking a paternity test today to confirm you are the father of our unborn child. Given your inconsistent fidelity, I want no questions left unanswered." James's face flushed crimson, and for a moment he looked like he might protest, but his words choked in his throat. Anna, from her vantage point on the upper floor, peered through a decorative balcony. Shock and horror contorted her face as she realized the ceremony was in ruins. "This ends now, James," Emily declared, tears brimming in her eyes. "You don't get to run away from your responsibilities. Not from me, and certainly not from our child." Silence blanketed the courtyard. Birds chirped in the distance, oblivious to the spectacle. Finally, James lowered his gaze, too consumed by humiliation to meet Emily's eyes, or the perplexed stares of his well-heeled guests. No vow would be exchanged today, only an avalanche of scandal that would echo far beyond the walls of this chateau. The string quartet had long gone silent, and the sweet scent of peonies was now overpowered by tension thick enough to taste. The wedding guests, once poised for a celebration worthy of royalty, now stood in stunned clusters, their designer shoes crunching over gravel as they whispered in disbelief. And through the chaos, Anna Beaumont descended the grand staircase, the train of her custom Dior gown billowing behind her like a white flag of surrender. She had waited years for this moment, planned every shimmering detail down to the monogrammed napkins and imported orchids. She had envisioned gasps of admiration, not gasps of scandal. But reality had a different script. Her heels clicked sharply with each step as she reached the courtyard. Her eyes scanned the crowd and landed on the cause of her humiliation, Emily Harrington. There she stood, calm but powerful. The legal papers in one hand, her pregnancy undeniable beneath a sleek navy dress. Emily wasn't just the wife Anna had hoped to replace. She was a symbol of the truth Anna had tried to outshine. And she had done what no one expected, shown up pregnant and unbowed and shattered the fantasy in one brutal blow. Anna's fists clenched at her sides. Her eyes burned. "You're ruining everything," she shouted, her voice brittle and cracking under the weight of public humiliation. Emily didn't flinch. The wedding guests parted like the Red Sea as Anna stormed toward the gazebo, her veil slipping to the side. Cameras clicked from every angle. Reporters scribbled notes like vultures circling a fresh kill. James stood near the altar, pale and frozen. His mouth opened, then closed again. His usually confident posture sagged under the weight of panic. Anna turned to him, her eyes wide, pleading. "Say something. Defend us." James didn't move. He glanced quickly between Emily, the DNA test now, in Christine Patterson's hands, and the horrified expressions of his guests. Then he looked away. Shame painting his face. "You promised me." Anna continued, her voice trembling now. "You said you loved me, that you'd leave her, that this day, this wedding would be ours." No response, only silence. Somewhere in the crowd, someone let out a sympathetic sigh. Another muttered, "Poor girl," while a few business guests slowly slipped away, avoiding the press waiting near the gates. Anna's breath hitched. "You said it was over with her." "You lied." James looked up at last, his voice low and flat. "I didn't expect her to show up. I never wanted it to happen like this." "You didn't want to get caught, you mean?" Emily said, stepping forward. Her voice wasn't cruel, it was controlled. Her eyes locked on Anna, not with envy or hatred, but with hard-won clarity. "You built your entire fairy tale on someone else's reality. Did you really think it wouldn't collapse?" Anna blinked, stunned by the composure of the woman she'd imagined as weak and invisible. Christine Patterson moved to James's side, holding the DNA kit like a gavel. "Mr. Harrington will be submitting a sample today. Refusal will be interpreted by the court as confirmation of paternity. You'll also be served with final divorce documents. You are advised not to interfere." Anna's face contorted with disbelief. "You're doing this in front of everyone." Christine nodded. "You orchestrated a wedding spectacle. This is simply a correction." The words hit Anna harder than any slap. Reporters huddled in the distance, snapping photos with ruthless enthusiasm. Emily turned to them briefly, speaking with calm assurance. "I'm not here to create a scene. I'm here to reclaim what's mine, the truth, my dignity, and a future for my child without lies." Anna stepped backward, her heels catching in the cobblestone. Her once lustrous curls now hung limp in the humid air. Mascara streaked her cheeks like war paint. This wasn't just a ruined wedding. It was a ruined illusion. The fantasy she had nurtured, fed by designer fittings, whispered promises and hotel suite rendezvous, had collapsed in front of the world's most watchful eyes. She thought she had won. She thought she had been chosen. But all she had done was gamble on a man who couldn't even speak in her defense. Anna's voice dropped to a whisper only James could hear. "You let me believe in all of this. You let me believe I mattered." James's reply was silence. With that, Anna turned away, lifting the hem of her dress with trembling hands. She pushed past the guests, many now avoiding her gaze, and disappeared into the chateau. The glass doors shutting behind her, like the final curtain of a failed performance. The doves, once meant to be released in celebration, remained cold. The courtyard at Château de Montclair still hummed with whispered chaos, as Emily Christine Patterson and private investigator Jonathan Reed guided James Harrington into the chateau's library. The heavy doors shut behind them with an echoing thud, sealing them off from the cameras and murmuring guests outside. The air inside the library was cool, the smell of aged parchment and mahogany hanging heavy. A fireplace crackled softly, its glow illuminating James's tense face. He looked around as if hoping someone would swoop in and diffuse the confrontation for him. But no one was coming. Emily stood tall, her posture steady, despite the storm churning inside her. Her pregnancy was visible beneath her navy dress, and her eyes, red but resolute, locked onto James with the fury of a woman betrayed in front of the world. "How long?" she asked. No preamble, no soft tone. James faltered. "Emily." "I don't insult me," she cut in sharply. "How long have you been lying to me? How long has Anna been more important than your vows? Than your child?" He opened his mouth again, but no coherent answer came. Eventually, he sank into one of the leather armchairs near the fireplace, running a hand through his hair. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," he mumbled. "Anna was a mistake that became more complicated than I ever intended." Emily blinked once. A mistake doesn't involve engagement rings and five-star resorts. A mistake doesn't end in a wedding gown and a guest list. James buried his face in his hands. I was unhappy. I didn't know how to fix us. We didn't need fixing, she said, her voice now shaking. You needed discipline. You needed to grow up. Christine Patterson, ever the poised legal warrior, placed a file on the nearby table. Mr. Harrington, she said coolly, your marital infidelity is now a matter of public record. These papers outline a petition for divorce on grounds of adultery and emotional distress. In accordance with the prenuptial agreement, Emily is entitled to a substantial portion of marital assets as well as primary custody of the unborn child. James sat upright. You're going to take my child away from me. Emily's voice softened, but only slightly. You gave away the right to raise this child when you chose a mistress over a marriage. You lied. You humiliated me. In public. And now you expect sympathy. No, he admitted. I don't expect anything. I know I failed. But I want to be part of the baby's life. I'll do whatever it takes. Jonathan Reed stepped forward and placed a small kit on the table. You'll start by confirming paternity. You can take the DNA test here or at the clinic. Refusal will be taken as admission of paternity under New York state law. James nodded. I won't fight that. Silence followed. Emily looked at him for a long time, as if trying to see even a shadow of the man she had once fallen in love with, the man who had danced with her barefoot in their Paris flat, who once cried happy tears when she showed him the sonogram. But all she saw now was a man clinging to the wreckage of his own selfishness. She turned to Christine. File everything. I don't want to delay this another day. Christine nodded and collected the paperwork. We'll file within the hour. Expect a court summons by week's end. James stood slowly, his expression hollow. I'm sorry, Emily. Truly. I know you are, she said softly. But sorry doesn't rebuild what you destroyed. Just as they opened the door to leave, Jonathan Reed paused and turned back to James. For what it's worth, he said, most men I deal with fight until the bitter end. You accepted responsibility. That's something. James gave a weak nod. It was hardly redemption, but it was all he had left. They stepped back into the corridor, where the wedding guests still lingered, stunned and speechless. News of the confrontation had spread like wildfire. Anna, abandoned in the bridal suite, had thrown a vase and demanded her assistant pack her things. The fairy tale she'd envisioned had ended not with a kiss, but with a courtroom. As Christine and Emily exited the front steps of the chateau, a few guests whispered apologies and encouragements. Cameras clicked again. Reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Harrington, will you forgive him? Are you planning to raise the baby alone? Was the wedding sabotage planned? Emily paused just once at the bottom of the marble stairs. With the cameras trained on her, she looked straight ahead and said, I didn't sabotage anything. I stood up for myself and my child. Then she climbed into her car and shut the door. Inside the chateau, James remained by the fireplace, staring into the flames. He had no idea how long he sat there, replaying every choice, every lie, every moment of indulgence that had brought him here. Outside, the sun dipped behind the French hills, casting long shadows across the roses in the courtyard. The wedding was over. The reckoning had just begun. The events at Château de Montclair sent shockwaves across continents. Within hours of Emily's dramatic interruption, The wedding that had been carefully curated to reflect power, elegance, and prestige unraveled into a media inferno. Headlines screamed across digital banners, magazine covers, and morning talk shows. Pregnant wife interrupts billionaire's wedding with DNA test and divorce. Summons James Harrington. Publicly humiliated. Mistress left at the altar, from glamour to disaster. Anna Beaumont's dream wedding implodes. The public couldn't get enough. Social media lit up with every photo snapped by paparazzi, the look of dread on James's face, the heartbreak in Emily's tearful but resolute expression, and Anna's stunned descent down the staircase, still clutching the train of her untouched wedding gown. TikToks, memes, and dramatic reenactments exploded online. Overnight, Emily Harrington became an icon of dignity under fire, while James and Anna were cast as villains in a real-life soap opera. At the gates of the chateau, reporters swarmed like vultures, shouting questions and jamming microphones toward passing vehicles. Mary O'Neill, the once proud wedding coordinator, desperately tried to salvage what little was left of her reputation, issuing a statement that the event had been sabotaged by outside parties. No one bought it. Anna Beaumont was ushered into a black SUV by two assistants. Her head low, her veil removed her cheeks, streaked with running mascara. As she sank into the seat, she caught her own reflection in the tinted glass. A bride without a groom, a socialite stripped of her fantasy. Her silence was deafening. Inside another car, James Harrington slumped into the leather seat beside his attorney, his hands trembling slightly. No words were spoken. There was nothing to say. Emily, on the other hand, had already left quietly. She didn't wait for applause or apologies. Her mission had been clear and brutally effective: confront, expose, and protect. And with her documents served and her DNA test demanded, she had done all three. The ride back to her Manhattan townhouse was quiet, except for the soft hum of the car engine and the rhythmic flutter of her baby's kicks. For the first time in months, she felt in control. In the following days, the chaos intensified. Outside Emily's home, paparazzi camped with lawn chairs and long lenses. Her doorman was forced to turn away reporters, while neighbors whispered and speculated in hallways. But inside, she focused on her baby's health, avoiding interviews, and letting Christine Patterson handle the public statements. "She's not a woman seeking revenge," Christine told the press. "She's a woman seeking justice and peace." Meanwhile, James's world was collapsing in slow motion. At Harrington Holdings, shareholders convened emergency meetings. Though James retained his seat on the board, pressure mounted from all sides to step down from public leadership. The scandal had tainted not just his name, but the company's image. Charles Harrington, level-headed and strategic, quietly began handling major investor relations in his brother's place. James released a brief statement through a spokesperson. "I deeply regret the pain I've caused to my wife and family. My priority now is resolving these matters privately and honoring my responsibilities." But the damage was already done. Anna Beaumont's fall from grace was equally swift. Her follower count plummeted by the hundreds of thousands. Brands that once lined up to sponsor her walked away overnight. Her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. A carefully worded apology video she released on Instagram, set against a neutral background, tears strategically appearing, was met with mixed reactions. "I was misled," she said. "I believed in promises that were never kept. I didn't know the full extent of his betrayal." Some sympathized, others didn't. One commenter captured the internet's mood best. "Even if you were misled, you walked into a wedding knowing he was still legally married. That's not love. It's ambition, dressed in lace." Anna retreated to the Italian coast, staying at a friend's villa. They're surrounded by silence and luxury she could no longer afford. She replayed every decision that led her here. Part of her still hoped James might call, might explain, might choose her again. But days passed. He didn't. In Manhattan, Emily met weekly with her legal team and her therapist, Dr. Harriet James. She prepared for the next phase court. She would seek primary custody and ensure her child's future wasn't shaped by tabloid drama or inherited recklessness. Through it all, she held her head high. She declined interviews, turned down lucrative offers to tell her story, and focused instead on her baby's nursery. Lavender walls, white curtains, soft lullabies. Behind the scenes, Christine Patterson moved swiftly. She filed the custody petition, prepared financial disclosures, and gathered support from medical professionals and character witnesses. Emily wasn't just preparing to win. She was preparing to start over on her terms. And somewhere across town, in a penthouse that once hosted the most elite soirees, James sat alone. The silence in his life now echoed louder than applause ever had. He had lost his wife, his image, and possibly the admiration of an entire empire. Weeks turned into months, and with them came the slow, grinding machinery of legal consequences and emotional fallout. The once lavish narrative of James Harrington, the billionaire playboy, whose wedding was torpedoed by his pregnant wife, now simmered in courtrooms, press conferences, and boardrooms filled with nervous executives. No longer the darling of Gracema's elite, James had become a cautionary tale. The first bombshell to land came in a sealed envelope delivered to Emily's attorney, Christine Patterson, the official results of the paternity test. Though Emily had always known the truth in her heart, seeing the medical document confirm James Harrington as the father of her unborn child still sent a tremor through her. There was no more ambiguity, no room for manipulation or denial. And with that final truth confirmed, the real reckoning began. Emily proceeded with the divorce, now armed with indisputable evidence of adultery and public humiliation. Patterson filed for full custody, seeking not only financial support, but also legal protection for the baby. Given the visibility of the scandal, the stakes were high, and so was the scrutiny. The media's attention, though slowly waning, continued to orbit around Emily's every move. But she remained composed, determined to ensure her child would never be a pawn in James's high society games. James, for his part, tried to make amends in the only way he knew how: money. He sent gifts, crystal-studded cribs, imported bassinets, monogrammed baby clothes. He deposited a sizable amount into a college fund and offered to pay for a full-time nanny. But Emily sent most of it back. A few items she kept for practicality, but none as tokens of goodwill. Support isn't the same as presence, she told Christine quietly, and a child needs more than gestures wrapped in gold. Meanwhile, at Harrington Holdings, the scandal had begun to ripple through boardroom confidence. While the company's financials remained intact, investors were skittish. Potential partnerships fell through quietly. Charles Harrington, James's older brother, began to unofficially step into more leadership roles. Though he didn't seek a coup, many in the company saw him as the safer face of the empire's future. Publicly, James kept a low profile, his presence at shareholder meetings reduced to short Zoom appearances or signed statements. The swagger that once defined him had dimmed, replaced by curt nods and tired eyes. His empire had not collapsed, but the gleaming polish that once dazzled the world had dulled. As for Anna Beaumont, she went into self-imposed exile. After the wedding catastrophe, her Instagram following plummeted. Brands pulled sponsorships. Tabloid columns called her the delusional social climber, painting her as both seductress and fool. In a moment of desperate self-preservation, Anna posted a tearful, long-winded confession on social media. "I was misled," she wrote. "I was promised love, loyalty, and a future. I never intended to hurt anyone, and I deeply regret my role in what happened." The response was mixed. Some fans offered forgiveness, others ridiculed her further. Invitations to appear on reality television or do interviews trickled in, tempting her to stay in the spotlight. But ultimately, she chose silence. The cost of fame, she realized, had been far too high. On a crisp autumn morning, James and Emily found themselves seated on opposite sides of a courtroom for the final divorce hearing. Emily, now 8 months pregnant, wore a simple grey maternity dress. Her calm demeanor masked the quiet storm of emotions inside. James looked smaller, somehow less like a mogul, and more like a man who had lost sight of what mattered. Christine Patterson presented her final argument: full custody for Emily-supervised visitation rights for James, and a divorce settlement befitting the damage done not just financially, but emotionally and reputationally. James's lawyer argued for joint custody, suggesting James was remorseful and willing to be involved in the child's life. He spoke of James's efforts to provide the college fund, the gifts, the willingness to apologize. But the judge wasn't swayed by words alone. In the end, the ruling was clear. Emily would retain primary custody of the child. James would be granted structured visitation, supervised until further evaluation. He was ordered to pay child support and a substantial settlement per the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause. The divorce was finalized that very afternoon. James nodded quietly, accepting the terms. There was no dramatic objection, no final plea. Just the dull acknowledgement that his choices had finally caught up to him. Outside the courthouse, a few remaining reporters jostled for quotes. Emily stepped forward briefly, supported by Christine and her longtime confidant, Dr. Harriet James. Cameras clicked as she addressed the press. "I didn't come here today to ruin anyone," she said calmly. "I came to reclaim my peace, to protect my child, and to end a chapter built on deception. What comes next is focused entirely on my child's well-being." Then she stepped into a waiting car, leaving behind the remnants of a marriage that had unraveled before the entire world. In the weeks that followed, James all but disappeared from the public eye. Anna tried to rebuild her brand behind the scenes. And Emily. She turned her focus inward toward preparing for motherhood healing and laying the foundation for something far greater than revenge, a future rooted in dignity, strength, and unconditional love. And so ends the tumultuous tale of James Harrington and Emily Harrington, an unforgettably messy triangle of power, passion, and betrayal. One lavish wedding devolved into a scandalous battleground, where a pregnant wife proved that truth and dignity can outshine even the wealthiest deceptions. We've witnessed tears, confessions, heartbreaks, and ultimately a dramatic quest for justice and self-respect. If you found yourself absorbed by the twists and turns of this real-life drama, don't let the story stop here. Like this video if you were hooked by every shocking detail. Share it with friends who crave a dose of juicy intrigue. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories that prove reality can be stranger than fiction. Your support helps us bring forth tales that resonate, inspire, and sometimes shock us into rethinking everything we know about love, loyalty, and ambition.